The Montana winter had set in with a vengeance, turning Elijah Coulter's isolated ranch into a fortress of solitude amidst the rolling foothills of the Bitterroot Mountains. At 42, Elijah had grown accustomed to the silence. 15 years had passed since his return from his third tour in Afghanistan, and 10 since he'd purchased this remote property, where the nearest neighbor was 7 miles down a gravel road. The howling wind rattled the windows of his timber frame house as he stoked the fire in the River Rock hearth. Outside, the temperature had plummeted to 15 below, and the forecast promised more snow before dawn. His cattle were secured in the barn, his provisions stocked, and as he poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, Elijah settled into the familiar embrace of his solitude. The sudden, desperate pounding at his front door nearly caused him to drop his glass. "Help!" The voice was barely audible through the thick oak door and the screaming wind. "Please!" Elijah yanked the door open, his hand instinctively reaching for the pistol he kept nearby. Instead of a threat, he found a woman collapsing into his arms, her face bloodied, her clothes torn and inadequate for the brutal cold. Her skin was alarmingly cold to the touch. "Jesus Christ!" he muttered, lifting her slight frame effortlessly. Her eyelids fluttered, revealing hazel eyes clouded with pain and exhaustion before closing again. He carried her to the couch nearest the fire, grabbing the woolen blanket from the back of his armchair to wrap around her trembling body. Her dark hair was matted with blood from a gash along her hairline, and her breathing came in shallow, labored gasps. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Elijah gently patted her cheek. "I need to know if there's anyone else out there." Her eyes opened briefly. "No, just me." She attempted to sit up, but winced sharply, clutching her side. "Don't move. You might have broken ribs." He reached for his phone. "I'm calling for help." Her hand shot out with surprising strength, gripping his wrist. "No. No hospitals. No police." Fear blazed in her eyes, suddenly clear and determined. "You're hurt. Badly. I know." She swallowed hard. "I'm a nurse. I can tell you what to do." Elijah studied her face. In addition to the head wound, a bruise was forming along her jawline, and there was a calculation behind her eyes that told him she wasn't delirious with pain. "What's your name?" he asked, reaching for the first aid kit he kept in the kitchen. "Diana." She hesitated. "Diana Wells." The pause didn't escape his notice. "I'm Elijah Coulter. You want to tell me why you're running around in a blizzard with no coat, and why I can't call for proper medical help?" Diana's eyes darted toward the door, then back to him. "I was in a car accident. My car went off the road about a mile back." Her voice was steadier now, but Elijah had interrogated enough people in his former life to recognize a partial truth, and the no hospitals part. He began cleaning the wound on her forehead, which thankfully looked worse than it was. "I don't have insurance," she replied quickly. Too quickly. In Montana, emergency rooms don't turn away trauma patients because of insurance. Her eyes met his, a silent standoff ensuing. Finally, she sighed. "I can't explain everything right now. But I'm not a criminal, and I'm not running from the law. I'm running from someone who wants to hurt me." Elijah considered this. During his military service and later as a private security contractor, he developed an instinct for danger and deception. This woman was hiding something significant, but his gut told him she wasn't lying about being in danger. "Let me patch you up, then we'll talk," he finally said. "But I need to know if whoever you're running from might come looking for you here." Diana's eyes closed briefly, exhaustion and pain evident in the lines of her face. "They don't know I'm here. I made sure of it." As Elijah tended to her wounds, the storm outside intensified. Through the window, nothing was visible but swirling white. Even if he wanted to, getting her to town tonight would be impossible. "You can stay until the road's clear," he said finally, helping her sip some water. "But when they do, we're going to have a real conversation about what you're involved in." Diana nodded weakly, the adrenaline clearly wearing off as the pain medications he'd given her took effect. "Thank you," she whispered. As she drifted into an uneasy sleep by the fire, Elijah checked his rifle and handgun, then settled into the chair opposite her. Whatever storm had blown this woman to his doorstep, He suspected it might be more dangerous than the one raging outside. Diana awoke to the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, disorientation clouded her mind before the events of the previous night came rushing back. She was in the rancher's house, Elijah's house. Pain radiated from her ribs as she carefully pushed herself to a sitting position. "You shouldn't be moving yet." Elijah's deep voice came from the kitchen doorway. He stood holding 2 mugs of coffee, his expression unreadable. "I've had worse," Diana replied, though the grimace that accompanied her words belied her attempt at nonchalance. "I doubt that." He handed her a mug, then set a plate of eggs and bacon on the coffee table. "Roads are still closed. Radio says the plows won't be through until late afternoon at the earliest." Diana nodded, sipping the coffee gratefully. The warmth spread through her chest, momentarily distracting from the pain. "Thank you for everything." Elijah sat across from her, his weathered face serious beneath salt and pepper stubble. "Time for that conversation. Who are you running from?" Diana studied him. In the daylight, she could see the military bearing in his posture, the watchful assessment in his blue eyes. The house was sparsely decorated but meticulously clean, with a few framed photographs, mostly of landscapes, one of a younger Elijah in uniform with other soldiers. "My husband," she finally said. "Ex-husband, technically." "He'd do that to your face." "And the ribs. And my shoulder." She rotated it gingerly. "Robert has a temper." Elijah's expression didn't change, but something hardened in his eyes. "Police reports?" 3. Restraining orders, 2. Doesn't matter." Diana set the mug down. "He's the sheriff's brother-in-law in our county." The reports disappeared. The restraining orders were never served. "Where's home?" "Idaho. Coeur d'Alene." Elijah nodded. "That's about 7 hours from here in good weather. You drove all that way injured." "I had to." Diana's voice remained steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "He said he'd kill me this time. I believed him." "What changed?" "People like that, they escalate gradually." Diana's gaze dropped to her hands. "I found out I'm pregnant. 6 weeks. When I told him." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Elijah was quiet for a long moment. "Does he know where you were headed?" "No. I didn't even know. I just drove." She looked up at him. "I've been saving for months. Cash tips from the hospital cafeteria, where I work. I was going to leave next week, but last night." He forced your hand. Elijah stood, walking to the window. "There's something else you're not telling me." Diana tensed. "What do you mean?" "Your car. You said it went off the road a mile back. In weather like this, that means you walked through a blizzard for at least 20 minutes with broken ribs and other injuries. Most people would have stayed with their vehicle." She swallowed hard. "I thought I saw headlights following me. I panicked." Elijah turned back to her, his expression skeptical. "And you just happened to find the only house for miles." "I saw your lights from the highway. It was a desperate chance." He seemed to consider this, then nodded once. "Eat your breakfast. You need the strength." As Diana picked at the food, Elijah made several phone calls, speaking in low tones she couldn't quite catch. When he returned, his face was grim. "I have a friend in the sheriff's department back in Helena. Had him run your name." He watched her reaction carefully. "Diana Wells doesn't exist. At least, not one matching your description." Diana set down her fork, her appetite gone. "My maiden name is Diana Sawyer. I was using Wells when I checked into motels. I thought it would be safer." "And Robert's last name?" "Grayson. Robert Grayson." Elijah made another call, stepping into the next room. When he returned, his expression had changed subtly. "Robert Grayson exists. Deputy Sheriff in Kootenai County, Idaho. Decorated officer." Diana's face drained of color. "Deputy?" "He told everyone he was a security consultant. I never." Her voice faltered. "That explains a lot." "Like why the reports disappeared." Elijah's voice was flat. "You don't believe me." "It wasn't a question. I believe someone hurt you. I believe you're scared. The rest." He shrugged. "Hard to say." Diana stood shakily, wincing with the effort. I should go. I've put you in enough danger. Sit down. His tone was firm but not unkind. You're not going anywhere in this weather, and you're in no condition to drive. Besides, he added, glancing toward the window, there's someone coming up the drive. Diana rushed to the window, nearly collapsing as pain shot through her side. Through the falling snow, a dark SUV with tinted windows was slowly navigating the long driveway to the ranch. Is it him? Elijah asked, reaching for his rifle. I don't know, she whispered, but Robert drives a black SUV. The SUV came to a stop 50 yards from the house. Through the swirling snow, Elijah could make out government plates. Stay away from the windows, he instructed Diana, moving to the front door with his rifle held casually but ready. He opened it just as a man in a heavy winter coat and hat emerged from the vehicle. Elijah Coulter? The man called, raising his hand slightly to show they were empty. I'm Agent Mark Daniels, FBI. I need to speak with you. Elijah's expression remained neutral. Let's see some ID. Slowly, the man produced a badge wallet, holding it up. May I approach? Stay where you are. Elijah descended the porch steps, keeping his rifle pointed at the ground but ready, and approached the agent through ankle-deep snow. He examined the credentials carefully. What brings the FBI to my door in a blizzard, Agent Daniels? We have reason to believe you're harboring a witness we're looking for. Daniels' eyes flicked toward the house. Diana Sawyer. It's imperative we speak with her. Behind Elijah, the front door opened. Diana stood in the doorway, her face pale but resolute. I'm here. Ms. Sawyer, Daniels nodded. We need to talk. 20 minutes later, they sat around Elijah's kitchen table, Diana's hands wrapped tightly around a fresh mug of coffee, while Agent Daniels spread several photographs across the wooden surface. Robert Grayson isn't just a deputy, Daniels explained. He's the right-hand man to Victor Sokolov, who runs one of the largest human trafficking operations in the Pacific Northwest. Elijah studied the surveillance photos showing Robert with a broad-shouldered man with a close-cropped beard. And you know this how. We've been building a case for 3 years. Miss Sawyer here is our key witness, though she didn't know it until recently. Diana's knuckles whitened around her mug. I found files on his computer. Girls' names, dates, locations. I thought he was having affairs. Then I found photos. Her voice caught. Young girls. Terrified. Diana copied everything. Daniels continued. Contacted our field office in Coeur d'Alene last month. We've been preparing to bring her into protective custody, but Grayson must have suspected something. He started checking my phone, following me to work. Diana's voice was hollow. Then I found out I was pregnant. We had arranged to extract her next week, Daniels said, but she disappeared. We've been tracking her cell phone's last known location when it pinged near here before going offline. I threw it away after I called the emergency contact Agent Daniels gave me. Diana explained to Elijah. I told them I was heading for Canada, then drove here instead. I didn't know if I could trust them anymore. When I thought I saw headlights following me. It was probably our people, Daniels acknowledged. We had an agent on standby in Coeur d'Alene, but you gave him the slip. Elijah leaned back in his chair, assessing the situation. So what happens now? Now we move her to a safe location until the grand jury convenes next month. Daniels gathered the photos. Sokolov has connections everywhere. Montana isn't far enough. And after I testify, Diana asked quietly, witness protection. New identity, new location. Daniels' expression softened slightly. It's not an easy life, Miss Sawyer, but it's better than the alternative. Diana placed a protective hand over her stomach. And my baby will be protected too. Elijah stood abruptly, walking to the window. The snow had intensified again, visibility dropping to almost nothing. You're not taking her anywhere in this storm. Mr. Coulter. It's non-negotiable, Agent. These roads are treacherous in good weather. In this, he gestured toward the whiteout conditions. You'd be delivering her straight to the morgue, not witness protection. Daniels looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. First light tomorrow, then. I'll have a helicopter extraction team on standby. Why not bring in more agents now? Diana asked. The fewer people who know your location, the better, Daniels replied. Sokolov has people inside multiple agencies. We don't know how far his reach extends. As if on cue, Daniels' phone rang. His expression darkened as he listened to the caller. Understood. Keep me posted. He ended the call, turning to Diana with grave eyes. That was my partner. Robert Grayson has assembled a search party. He's telling people his pregnant wife had a mental breakdown and ran away during a domestic dispute. He's got state police, county deputies, and about 200 volunteers looking for you across 3 states. Diana paled. They'll find me. Not here, they won't, Elijah said firmly. My property isn't on most maps. The access road isn't marked. And in this weather, no one's getting up here without a snowcat or serious 4-wheel drive. I can't ask you to risk. You didn't ask. Elijah cut her off. Agent Daniels, you said first light tomorrow. That gives us about 16 hours to prepare for the worst. Daniels studied the former soldier. You military? Special forces. 3 tours in Afghanistan, then private security. The agent nodded slowly. Good, because if Grayson figures out she's here, he won't come alone, and he won't come to arrest her. Elijah met Diana's frightened gaze with steady resolve. Then we better make sure he doesn't find what he's looking for. As dusk approached, the storm finally began to abate, leaving a pristine blanket of snow across the landscape and an eerie stillness in its wake. Elijah moved methodically through the house, checking sight lines and defensive positions, while Agent Daniels maintained contact with his team via satellite phone. My people are monitoring police bands and social media, Daniels informed them, returning to the kitchen where Diana sat nursing a cup of tea. Grayson's search has expanded to include parts of western Montana. He's got about 40 vehicles and several hundred volunteers spreading out from the interstate. Any indication they're headed this way? Elijah asked, cleaning his rifle on the kitchen table. Not yet, but Grayson's smart. He'll check property records, satellite maps. Diana's hands trembled slightly. What if your extraction team can't get here in time? Then we hold until they can, Elijah said simply. He finished reassembling his rifle and handed Daniels a shotgun. You familiar with this? The agent nodded, checking the mechanism with practiced ease. Military. Marines, before the Bureau. Daniels turned to Diana. Ms. Sawyer, I need to move you to the most secure room in the house. The root cellar, Elijah supplied. It's beneath the kitchen, concrete walls, one entrance that can be secured from the inside. Diana shook her head. I won't hide while you 2 risk your lives. With respect, ma'am, Daniels said firmly. Your testimony can bring down an entire trafficking network. That makes you the priority. He's right, Elijah added more gently. Besides, you're protecting 2 lives now. The satellite phone buzzed. Daniels answered, his expression growing increasingly grim. When? He demanded. How many? After listening a moment longer, he ended the call. What is it? Diana asked. 3 SUVs were spotted turning onto the access road that leads to this property. County Sheriff ran the plates, all registered to shell companies we've linked to Sokolov. Elijah checked his watch. How did they find us so quickly? My guess. They've been monitoring emergency services. Your name might have come up when Diana's car was reported abandoned. Daniels checked his weapon. Extraction team is 2 hours out at minimum. Then we need to buy time. Elijah moved to a cabinet, unlocking it to reveal several more firearms and boxes of ammunition. Daniels, get her to the cellar. There's a gun safe down there with a satellite phone inside. Code is November 17th, 04. Diana stood, wincing at the pain in her ribs. Elijah. Go, he said firmly. I need to know you're safe, so I can focus. As Daniels led her toward the kitchen, Diana suddenly turned back. Without hesitation, she crossed to Elijah and pressed her lips to his cheek. Thank you, she whispered, for believing me when no one else would. A moment later, They disappeared through the pantry doorway that concealed the cellar entrance. Elijah took a deep breath, centering himself. It had been years since he'd been in combat, but the familiar calm settled over him. The heightened awareness, the slowing of time, the clarity of purpose. He positioned himself by a window with a view of the approaching road, staying back in the shadows. Through his rifle scope, he could make out the headlights of the vehicles, still about a mile distant, but steadily advancing through the snow-covered terrain. Daniels returned, taking position at another window. Cellar secure. She's armed and has comms. Good. Elijah studied the approaching lights. 3 vehicles, probably 4 men each. We're outnumbered. Quality over quantity, Daniels replied with grim humor. What's your play? We let them get close enough to identify, confirm they're hostile, then discourage them from coming any closer. Elijah's voice was steady. No killing unless absolutely necessary. These aren't just Sokolov's men. Some might be actual law enforcement who don't know what they're involved in. The vehicles were close enough now to identify, black SUVs with tinted windows, moving in formation up the snow-covered drive. They stopped about 200 yards from the house, forming a semicircle. Doors opened and men emerged, all armed, all in tactical gear despite the civilian vehicles. Federal agent. Daniels called out through a bullhorn. This property is under FBI jurisdiction. Identify yourselves. A tall figure emerged from the lead vehicle. Even from this distance, Diana's description of Robert Grayson was unmistakable, broad-shouldered, military-bearing, moving with controlled aggression. This is Deputy Sheriff Robert Grayson, Kootenai County Sheriff's Department. His voice carried clearly through the cold air. I'm looking for my wife, Diana Grayson, who is mentally unstable and fled during a medical emergency. We have reason to believe she's being held here. Negative, Deputy Grayson, Daniels responded. This is a federal operation. Stand down and withdraw your men immediately. Instead of responding, Grayson turned to the men around him, gesturing toward the flanks of the property. Several broke off, moving to encircle the house. They're not backing down, Elijah observed quietly. No, Daniels agreed, reaching for his satellite phone. They're settling in for a siege. Elijah adjusted his scope, focusing on Grayson's face. The man was scanning the house methodically, tactically. Not the behavior of a concerned husband, but of a predator calculating the best approach to reach his prey. He knows she's here, Elijah said softly, and he's not leaving without her. Night had fallen completely, the temperature plummeting under clear skies. The moonlight reflected brilliantly off the snow, illuminating the standoff as effectively as daylight. 2 hours had stretched into 4, and still Grayson's men maintained their positions, occasionally firing warning shots toward the house. In the root cellar, Diana huddled beneath a blanket, listening to the muffled sounds of gunfire above. The satellite phone beside her remained frustratingly silent, the extraction team delayed by unexpected complications. Her hand rested protectively over her stomach as she whispered promises to her unborn child, promises of safety, of a future free from fear. Upstairs, Elijah and Daniels had established a defensive rotation, one watching while the other rested. They had successfully repelled 2 probing attempts by Grayson's men to approach the house, careful to aim for extremities rather than center mass. They're getting bolder, Daniels observed as another volley of gunfire pinged off the exterior walls. Testing our response times, our positions. Elijah nodded, conserving his ammunition with precise, disciplined shots. They're waiting for something. Reinforcements, maybe. As if summoned by his words, the rumble of approaching vehicles echoed through the valley. But instead of coming from the direction of Grayson's position, these approached from the opposite side of the property, cutting off any potential escape route. Shit, Daniels muttered, peering through binoculars. His expression suddenly shifted from concern to confusion. Those aren't Sokolov's men. The new arrivals moved with military precision, establishing a perimeter that faced Grayson's position rather than the house. Elijah counted at least 15 vehicles, disgorging what appeared to be a small army of armed men and women in civilian clothes, but moving with unmistakable tactical training. Friends of yours? Elijah asked. Not Bureau, Daniels replied. continuing to observe the newcomers. His satellite phone buzzed, and he answered quickly. After a brief conversation, he lowered the phone, looking stunned. "Well," Elijah prompted. "You ever hear of the coalition?" Elijah's eyebrows rose slightly. "Private contractor group. Ex-special forces, intelligence. They usually work government contracts in conflict zones. My boss says they're here to assist with extraction. Apparently, Diana's testimony doesn't just implicate Sokolov. It potentially exposes a network that extends into multiple countries, including connections to terrorist financing. So now it's a national security issue," Elijah concluded. "Exactly. And the coalition has been authorized to ensure the witnesses' safety by any means necessary." A new voice crackled over the radio Daniels had been using to communicate with his team. "Agent Daniels, this is Commander Wilson with Coalition Special Operations. We have the hostile force contained. Requesting permission to engage." Daniels exchanged a look with Elijah before responding. "Hold position, Commander. We have civilian law enforcement personnel among the hostiles who may be unaware of the situation." "Understood. We've established communication with your extraction team. ETA 30 minutes. Recommend you prepare the witness for immediate evacuation." Elijah moved toward the kitchen to retrieve Diana, while Daniels continued coordinating with the coalition forces. As he opened the cellar door, he found Diana already halfway up the stairs, her face pale but determined. "I heard vehicles," she said. "More of them. Reinforcements. The good kind." Elijah helped her up the remaining steps. "Extraction team will be here soon." Outside, a standoff had developed between Grayson's forces and the newly arrived coalition operatives, who had established a defensive line between the house and the hostiles. "Robert won't give up," Diana said quietly, watching through the window. "He'll die before he lets me testify." "That can be arranged," Elijah replied grimly. The radio crackled again. "Agent Daniels, hostile force is advancing despite warnings. Request final authorization to engage." Before Daniels could respond, Diana took the radio from his hand. "This is Diana Sawyer. The man leading those men is Robert Grayson. He's not just after me. He knows I have evidence that will destroy him and Sokolov. There are innocent officers with him who don't know what they're involved in." She handed the radio back to Daniels, her expression resolute. "I need to end this." "What are you thinking?" Elijah asked, alarmed. "Let me talk to him. Over the radio. I know Robert. His pride won't let him back down in front of his men, but he also won't want them to hear what I know about him." Daniels hesitated. "It's too dangerous. More dangerous than a firefight with potential civilian casualties." Diana countered. "Give me the radio." After a moment's consideration, Daniels handed her the device. Diana took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Robert, this is Diana. I know you can hear me." The radio crackled with static before Grayson's voice emerged, unnervingly calm. "Diana, you've led me on quite a chase, sweetheart." "It's over, Robert. I have the files. All of them. The girls from Vladivostok. The money transfers to Sokolov. The shipment manifests." "You're confused, Diana. You need help. Come out, and we'll get you the treatment you need." "I've made copies. Multiple copies. If anything happens to me, they go to every news outlet and federal agency in the country." Her voice gained strength. "You know what I found. You know what happens to cops in prison, especially cops who traffic children." The silence stretched for several long seconds before Grayson responded, his voice now tight, with barely controlled rage. "You think you've won? You think these people will protect you? Sokolov's reach extends farther than you can imagine." "Maybe, but you won't be around to see it." Diana's hand trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. "Your men deserve to know who they're really working for. Stand down, or I start naming names, starting with the officers who helped you cover up the 3 girls who died in transport last summer." The radio went silent. Through the window, they could see movement among Grayson's forces, confusion, arguments breaking out. The sound of helicopter rotors suddenly filled the air as the extraction team arrived, landing in the cleared area behind the house that Elijah had designated earlier. Time to go, Daniel said urgently, guiding Diana toward the back door. As they stepped outside, a single gunshot echoed across the property. Through the open door, they could see Grayson's men scattering, some throwing down their weapons, others standing in stunned silence around one of the SUVs. Commander Wilson's voice came over the radio. Agent Daniels, be advised. Hostile leader is down. Self-inflicted gunshot wound. Remaining hostiles are surrendering. Diana stopped, swaying slightly as Elijah steadied her. He couldn't face it, she whispered. The exposure. The shame. Miss Sawyer, we need to move. The helicopter pilot called over the roar of the rotors. As they guided her toward the waiting helicopter, Diana turned to Elijah. Come with me, she said impulsively. They'll need protection during the trial, after the trial. Elijah looked from Diana to the ranch house behind them, his sanctuary, his exile. For 15 years, he had hidden from the world, from connection, from purpose. He thought of the child Diana carried, who would enter a world full of danger but also possibility. I'll follow where they take you, he promised, helping her into the helicopter. Someone needs to make sure you both stay safe. As the helicopter lifted off into the night sky, Diana looked down at the scene below. The coalition forces securing Grayson's men, the ranch house standing solid against the moonlit snow, and Elijah watching until they disappeared into the distance. She placed her hand over her stomach, feeling for the first time in months that the future held more promise than fear.